The age gap between my boyfriend and I is 13 years. My female friends unanimously declared, he's a beast. His male friends unanimously declared, he's incredible. He quickly grasped the underlying issue, understanding that jesting about our age difference was a vulgar affair. Perhaps many middle-aged men inevitably harbor such thoughts, but surely not my Aurelian, my distinguished older gentleman. The very first day I drove after obtaining my license, I sideswiped a Porsche. The other driver was a handsome man in his 30s. He could tell I was a novice, so he got out to inspect the damage, asking if I had insurance. Completely inexperienced in handling accidents, I called my brother-in-law, Lysander, for help. Lysander arrived and immediately started berating me, yet he remained self-righteous even when it was clear I was at fault. The man was amused by this display. It was your little sister who bumped into me. I didn't move an inch. Lysander, with his past as a street tough, wasn't having any of it. Fearing further trouble, I quickly stepped forward to concede. Lysander, it truly was my mistake. Get back in the car, Lysander roared. The man looked at Lysander, then at me, and said, all right, I'll transfer 1,000 to your WeChat for the repairs. I'll take care of mine myself. I was startled. Was he a fool with money to burn? After the transfer, Lysander was quite pleased. I silently headed towards the passenger seat. Just as I opened the door, the man behind me asked, the little lady isn't too shaken, is she? I shook my head. The man smiled and said, remember, next time something like this happens, don't move. Whoever's in a hurry, let them be the ones to move. Hearing this, I wasn't sure whether to nod or shake my head. I just ducked back into the car. It wasn't until the man's car had driven away that it dawned on me. Whoever's in a hurry is the one who moves, and the one who doesn't move isn't responsible. That's exactly what he'd done just now. Had I been played? These men in their 30s, they are so cunning. A few days later, my cousin, Serafina, received her performance bonus and wanted to buy a gift for her boss. I accompanied her to the wine shop downstairs. As we were making inquiries, a man descended from the upper floor. He looked incredibly familiar, but I couldn't place where I'd seen him before. He looked up, saw me, and smiled. Stopping beside me, he pointed to another bottle on the shelf and said to me, this one is good. The winery gave us a special price. It's suitable for a gift or for personal consumption. Serafina asked, are you the owner? The man smiled but didn't answer. Serafina then asked, so, how much of a discount can the owner give us? The man turned and called to a staff member, calculate the price with the lowest discount. I took a few more glances at him and finally remembered who he was. I was just about to ask him something when he suddenly inquired, is the car fixed? My heart skipped a beat. Did he have mind-reading abilities, or was my inner turmoil so obvious on my face? Just seconds before, my gaze towards him had been that of a stranger. How had he determined that I still remembered him? I tugged at Serafina and said apologetically, the car I bumped into the other day belonged to this owner. Serafina quickly exchanged a few polite words with the man, saying they'd think about the wine and come back another day. The man said, wait a moment, and called to the staff member, wrap up the wine. Give the customer a bottle to take with them. Serafina was ecstatic, repeatedly declining, oh, we couldn't possibly. In our line of work, we spend every day entertaining friends with wine and tea. Some friends come and sample for half a year without buying a single bottle, and that's just commonplace. Serafina smiled and said, wouldn't that be a loss? Business isn't calculated that way. Even if they come and drink for a year, as long as they bring in one big order or introduce a friend, it's still a profit, isn't it? Serafina readily agreed. I suddenly found myself a little curious about him. Serafina, having received a free bottle of wine, posted about it on her social media that evening. There were many likes and everyone agreed to go and try it together another day. Suddenly, I understood. This was the business he'd spoken of. Oh, these men in their 30s, they are so cunning. That night, back home, he sent me several professionally lit photos of the wine on WeChat, adding that we were acquainted through adversity and that I could come by any time if I needed anything. But my curiosity about him personally had far surpassed my interest in the wine. So I initiated a conversation. If someone comes and drinks your wine every day but doesn't bring you any big orders, wouldn't it still be a loss? He replied quickly, with good cigarettes, good tea, and good wine, whether they're friends or not, the higher your standards, the less likely they are to come often. Those who can come frequently, who can appreciate such hospitality, are friends who are well aware of their ability to help me. I thought for a moment and said, surely there are people who like to take advantage. He replied with a big laughing emoji, saying, you're such a child. I immediately sent an angry emoji, saying I understood everything. But I waited for a long time and he didn't reply. After I put down my phone to wash my face and returned, I saw his message. Not a single word, just another laughing emoji. At the end of the year, all the major shopping malls went into a frenzy of marketing. After a shopping spree with Serafina and finally escaping the brainwashing, good luck come, we found ourselves caught in the evening rush hour. We stood in the cold wind for half an hour, still unable to hail a cab. Bored, I posted on my social media with my location, expressing my current frustration. I never expected the man to message me. He said, walk forward to the green belt over there. I'll be there in 5 minutes at most. I replied, Roger, my savior. Sure enough, within a few minutes, his car appeared in sight. I grabbed Serafina, along with our numerous bags, and rushed into the car. Naturally, I took the passenger seat. After getting in, I was momentarily stunned. How could I have such a conditioned reflex? He asked me, going home. I asked him, were you just in the neighborhood? He smiled, it's not important. If it was, say so. If it wasn't, say so. This, it's not important, was incredibly intriguing. For some reason, I suddenly wanted to show Serafina that my relationship with him was different, so I started looking for a topic. Have you bought your clothes for the new year? This time he laughed, I'm how old, and I'm still buying new clothes for the new year? I clicked my tongue. My grandfather said that everyone, rich or poor, must wear new clothes for the new year to get rid of the bad luck of the previous year. He laughed, that's why I say you're a child. I turned to Serafina and said, he says we're both children. Serafina chuckled, the owner probably has family who've already bought them for him. I thought, that's right. I expected him to smile silently again, but surprisingly, he was quite proactive this time, replying, no, I haven't bought any. I tilted my chin to look at him. He was glancing at the rearview mirror on the side, and our eyes met. For no reason, we suddenly started laughing together. Neither of us said anything, but I felt an indescribable joy. I couldn't tell if it was the song on the radio, the sandalwood scent in the car, or the man driving beside me. I pretended to look out the window, my gaze brushing over his profile, and my heart fluttered gently. This man, he hadn't changed at all, but how had he become even more handsome than the last time I saw him? That night, I sat cross-legged on the carpet, holding my phone, continuing the conversation from the car with the man, Aurelian, in a desultory manner. I said, you have a lot of social engagements? Do you drink often? He replied, it depends on my mood. If I'm in a bad mood, I drink. If I'm in a good mood, I don't touch a drop. I asked, so, are you drinking today? He replied, not a drop. I gently bit my lip, unsure why, but I felt a sweetness in my heart. I thought again, wanting to understand him better, it was necessary to start discussing our personal lives. So I said that I was actually quite upset. The boy I'd had a crush on in high school had brought his girlfriend back to a class reunion, and my heart had suffered a great blow. I also said that my parents had argued more than a dozen times in the few days of the new year, and I felt like I was experiencing World War III every day. He replied, World War III, I've experienced that too. I seized the opportunity and asked, are you getting divorced too? He replied with a facepalm emoji, saying, I haven't even gotten married, how can I get divorced? He added, we've been on and off for 9 years. Seeing 9 years, I immediately understood his helplessness and sadness. He told me, in the previous years when we broke up, she always said, I wish you happiness, you deserve to be happy, I will remember your kindness. Later, after we got back together and broke up again, she said, take care of yourself. Only this time, she said, I know. He asked me, does this mean she's given up too? The question was thrown at me, and I didn't know what answer he wanted, so I simply replied, if you've given up, you don't need to care whether she has given up or not. He paused for a moment and replied, spot on. I'm surprisingly less perceptive than a child. I protested, I'm not a child. He replied with a string of ha 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 ha, followed by, when I'm not perceptive in the future, I won't need to go out anymore. I asked, then where should I go? He replied, To see you. A few days before the spring festival, the wine shop was incredibly busy. I occasionally passed by and craned my neck to look inside, but I couldn't see if he was there. Then, one evening, as I was looking inside as usual, I bumped into him as he was seeing a customer out. He smiled in surprise and said, June May, a type of black tea, want a cup? I was wearing Lysander's oversized cotton jacket and a pair of pighead slippers. I hesitated, but he pushed the door open wider and said, There's no one. We're about to close. I relaxed and happily entered. He washed the tea, steeped it, and poured it, his movement skilled and serene. I quietly looked at his face and noticed a very small but beautiful mole near his eyebrow. I also had an identical one near my other eyebrow. I couldn't help but smile silently. He looked up, looking at me with interest. I pointed to the mole near my eyebrow. He immediately understood, touching his own mole and saying, I was born with it. I nodded, me too. He said, I heard it's a memory from a past life. I deliberately teased, so were we both executed by firing squad in our past lives? He burst out laughing and said, Say it again, think of a good word. I rested my chin on my hand, thought for a long time, and said with a smile, Is it a mark for us to recognize each other? He handed me a cup of tea, smiled, and said, That means we still recognized each other in the end. I felt a surge of electricity flowing from my heart to my lower abdomen. I suddenly became quiet, silently drinking my tea, and then tried to steep the tea again, following his example. I got the order wrong, so he reached out and held my hand, guiding it to the filter pot, saying, Pour it here. Skin contact made my heart contract even tighter. Water was added again, and white steam rose. So, one could also get drunk on tea. On the morning of New Year's Eve, I rode in Serafina's car back to our hometown. When the car reached the entrance of the community, Lysander went to buy water, and I glanced at Aurelian's shop, which was surprisingly still open. I made up a silly excuse to Serafina, got out of the car, and ran to find him. I looked around, but he wasn't there. My mind was blank as I returned to the car. Once we were on the highway, I felt a strange sense of desolation. I suddenly understood the meaning behind the line often written in novels, I have since left the city where you are, far away from everything that has to do with you. I understood the bitterness behind those words. I hesitated all the way, but ultimately didn't message him. I simply posted on my social media, going back to my hometown for the new year. Friends, let's get together. The more exaggerated the emojis I used, the more dismal my mood was. It wasn't until I returned to my grandfather's house, finished making dumplings, and watched the spring festival gala that he remained completely silent, without any movement. At midnight, my cousins were setting off firecrackers. I looked up at the fireworks blooming in the sky and made the most sentimental wish of my life. Please, let something else happen between him and me. My parents' relationship wasn't good, and I'd known that since I was very young. Both of them had been unfaithful to their marriage, because in their arguments, I could always hear the names of another man and another woman. Those two people became the leverage and weapons that my parents held in their hands. When I graduated from elementary school, my parents seemed to have reached a reconciliation. They agreed that no matter how late it was, they must come home to sleep every night, and on weekends, they had to have a meal with me together. Normally, when they were harmonious, the family looked very normal. But whenever they argued, those two names would appear frequently. After what you did with so-and-so back then, you still have the nerve to make such demands? How clean were you back then? Don't you feel ashamed of yourself? To avoid affecting me, from middle school onwards, my grandparents had me move in with them, only returning home on weekends. Later, I got tired of running back and forth, and they were also afraid it would distract me, so on weekends, my parents simply came over for a meal. This meant that the weekly family portrait mode was achieved. Perhaps because of this upbringing, my hearing was always very good. Whenever anyone in the family mentioned my parents' names, I would immediately look up, able to pick up signals from 10 meters away. I said I didn't want to get involved in my parents' affairs, but I was terrified that they would get divorced. Luckily, my father was becoming increasingly wealthy, and my mother was reluctant to divorce. My mother's mantra changed from, I don't want to see him for a single day, to, I'll haunt him until I die. If I'm not happy, he won't be happy either. That was the first time I felt that money was a truly wonderful thing. It tied my mother and father together tightly. During those days of the new year, my parents also came to my grandparents' house frequently. They always argued within 3 sentences, one throwing a tantrum, the other acting as if the other were air. But I could discern from the details that their relationship was still okay. This life could probably continue. I quietly analyzed these things for my grandmother, and she shed tears, wiping them with her palm, saying, "You're so young and you're worrying about these things. If your parents were half as sensible as you, you'd be much better off." My family pitied me, but I felt that this was also quite good. I had learned to read people's expressions from a young age, and I also knew how to give people space. I was also very good at balancing the relationships within the family, never pushing or chasing any relationship. I felt that these were gifts given to me by heaven in adversity. However, with Aurelian, I truly felt for the first time that I should perhaps be more proactive. During those days of the new year, I looked at the bare trees in my grandmother's yard every day, always thinking if I could see him a few more times, talk to him a few more times, let him know a little more about myself, would he, perhaps, have a deeper impression of me? Would he perhaps take the initiative to send me a message? Even if it was just a mass-sent New Year's greeting. In this way, the obsession of hoping for him to contact me increased to its peak from New Year's Eve. Then, as the festive atmosphere faded, the obsession also began to decrease. Time was a wonderful thing. I finally stopped thinking about him every minute and every second. After the new year, I backed to the city. I went to the dentist, and altogether, including the previously damaged tooth, I needed to have 4 teeth implanted. While waiting at the hospital, I took a photo of my extracted bad teeth arranged neatly and posted it on my social media. Caption: "If I had known you were so expensive, I wouldn't have eaten so many white rabbit candies. You don't know how expensive teeth are until you get them implanted." Aurelian commented instantly, "Need a caregiver who will provide food, drinks, and no labor costs?" I had a cotton ball soaked in blood in my mouth and replied, "Don't be vague, are you really offering to be a caregiver?" He replied, "If you really want it, I'll really be there." I replied, "I want it." He said, "Send your location." Even though I sent the location, I didn't take it seriously, because afterwards he said he would buy me teething sticks and baby toothbrushes, and the more I listened, the more I felt he was joking. So, when I saw Aurelian, my mouth was swollen and I was stunned. I looked at him for a long time before I could utter a few words. "Did you fly here?" Aurelian sat opposite me. The 2 sofas were close together, and his knee touched mine. My first reaction wasn't that our faces were too close, but that my legs were too thick. So I wanted to push the sofa back. I moved my foot back, wanting to move the sofa, but unexpectedly, the sofa was stuck, and I lost my balance and fell over. He had super sensitive reflexes and grabbed me in an instant. He righted the sofa, and as I was about to sit down again, he pulled me firmly. And I sat firmly on his lap. He said, "I'm steadier than the sofa." Although sitting on his lap was sudden, I don't know where the physical reaction came from, but in a flash, my hand lightly hooked onto his shoulder. The human stool only lasted for a few seconds, but my heart was beating so fast it felt like it would jump out of my chest. My face was burning and my head was dizzy. I remembered reading before that high blood pressure could cause blood vessels to burst, and I was afraid that if this continued, my wound would start spurting blood. So I steadied myself on his shoulders and slowly stood up. In order not to show my shyness and nervousness, and also not to make him think I was rejecting him, I pretended to be in pain and gently moaned a couple of times. He received the message I wanted to convey: I can't move, it hurts when I move. From sitting down to standing up, the whole set of movements was natural and smooth, and neither of us felt awkward or abrupt. He looked at me steadily, suppressing a smile, and said, "I've had teeth pulled too, but it didn't seem to hurt as much as yours." I mumbled, "I'm a person who cherishes life and fears death." He laughed again and said, "Shall I take you to see the doctor? If everything's okay, we can go." I nodded, pointing to the corridor in front. As I stood up, he very naturally took the hand I was pointing with. He walked in front, pulling me along. I walked slowly, and he also took small steps. I inexplicably had the illusion of a husband taking his pregnant wife for a checkup. This beautiful illusion had just triggered an intracranial climax when Aurelian, while knocking on the door of the consultation room, whispered to me, "Why do I feel like I'm taking my daughter to see the dentist?" What? Was there such a big difference in the images in our minds? Emerging from the clinic, a wave of apprehension washed over me. His car pulled up. After a few months' absence, settling into it felt familiar, the comforting scent of sandalwood still lingering. I felt obliged to say something, considering he'd come all this way to see me. So, I stammered, word by word, "How did you get here so quickly?" He replied, "When I saw your post, I happened to be in City A, attending to some matters." A sudden realization struck me. City A wasn't terribly far, but it wasn't exactly next door either. He pulled the car over. "You're afraid to swallow because of the blood, aren't you? I'll get you some water to gently rinse your mouth." I nodded, my mouth already overflowing with saliva I'd been desperately holding in. He returned with water. As I delicately sipped and spat, he offered tissues, saying, "You don't need to force conversation. With me, you don't have to overthink." So young, yet always so mindful of others' feelings. It must have been a challenging path growing up. My rinsing paused. A warmth flushed my eyes, and a turmoil churned within me. He possessed an uncanny ability to see right through me. Honestly, a sliver of unhappiness pricked at me. If he hadn't appeared, I might have persevered alone. But he had come, offering a taste of tenderness, and now he was leaving. How would I face the long night? Then, just as I stepped through the school gates, I heard him call out, "Why don't you come with me?" On that day, I must have been utterly, completely mad. The car sped from the school onto the provincial highway. He looked at me, a knowing smile playing on his lips. I shot him a look of disdain. "Do I look that amusing?" He countered, "Laughter isn't always a response to amusement." He glanced at me, a subtle movement. Like after a satisfying meal, a pleasant breeze, driving a beloved car. I pointed to the car's air freshener, inhaling a delightful fragrance. Before the words were fully out, I heard him say, "And being in the company of a girl you cherish." I feigned a look of astonishment. Thinking he'd offended me, he hastily pointed to a bobblehead doll on the dashboard, a caricature of a black man with curly hair. I could only pat the doll's head and pretend to mutter to myself, "Oh, so your name is also M.O.?" Aurelian hadn't anticipated such a response and burst into a hearty laugh. I knew he wasn't naturally unrestrained. Expressing his affections through a joke was a significant step for him. Wisely, I steered the conversation elsewhere, pulling an egg from my pocket and offering it. He looked surprised. "Why are you carrying that around?" I mumbled, "I'm feeling weak. I was worried I'd lose too much blood and faint at the clinic." He laughed again, warmly. "I'm not hungry. Save it to regain your strength." I broke off a piece of the egg and held it to his lips. "You do realize, don't you, that you're incredibly important to many people?" He looked back at me, our eyes locking. It seemed that a single sentence and a shared gaze were all it took to persuade him to open his mouth and accept the egg. Midway through the journey, he suddenly remarked, "You seem to have quite the knack for handling me." I smiled to myself. "The same tactics I use on my grandfather surprisingly work on you, too." He protested, "Just how old do you think I am?" I retorted, "I never claimed to prefer younger men." After that day's parting, my thoughts turned to him with even greater frequency. It was then I truly understood the distinction between remembering and missing someone. There was a definite threshold. Before my tooth extraction, I hadn't even earned the right to miss him. Only after shared experiences, after the entanglement of emotions, was I finally deserving of missing him. And from the day we parted, I knew his every move, his every moment, as if I were there. He'd photograph his car upon departure. He'd send short videos of himself brewing tea at the shop. He'd snap a picture of his pillow before sleep. He sent these details unprompted, regardless of whether I wanted to know them. I'd tease, "I'm not worried about you having a secret mistress." He'd respond only with smiling emojis, never a word. A few days later, he accompanied me to the clinic to have my stitches removed. On the way back, Serafina called. "Is your roommate with you?" I hesitated. He was someone Serafina knew, and I can't quite explain the impulse, but I told her, "Someone you know is with me." Serafina paused for a few seconds, then, as if possessing a sixth sense, exclaimed, "The wine shop owner?" I was astonished. "How did you guess?" I glanced back at Aurelian, who also looked surprised. Serafina let out a shriek, "Are you two together?" I lowered the phone's volume. "You're overthinking it." Serafina hesitated again. "If you're together, your father will break your legs." I pressed my lips together, stealing a surreptitious glance at his face. His expression was relaxed, devoid of any alarm. Relieved, I playfully told Serafina, I'm not sure what kind of relationship it will become. But he's clearly an experienced veteran. It's a good opportunity for me to learn, so I'll be better prepared when I look for a boyfriend later. After saying it, I realized I might have gone too far. But I felt certain he'd understand. It was just a joke. Serafina, sensing I might not be able to speak freely, made small talk for a few more minutes before hanging up. A moment later, I sensed something was amiss with Aurelian. I turned to him and said, I just didn't know how to explain to Serafina that I was with you, and I didn't want her to ask a million questions, so I tried to brush it off with a joke. He remained silent. I continued to explain, but all he said was, it's fine. What do you want to eat? My pride couldn't take it anymore. I insisted he pull over. He remained silent. I said, even if we're arguing, at least let me know what I did wrong. Finally, he spoke. If you cared about me even a little, regardless of your reasons or intentions, you wouldn't have said something like that. I may be worldly and experienced, but I haven't been insincere to you for a single second. When he said that, my heart twisted. I turned to face him. Seeing the look in his eyes, I felt, for the first time, that I might be losing him. I tried to get out of the car. He stopped me. I tried to pull away. He held on. Finally, I snapped, is there any point in this public tug-of-war? He said, so my words hurt you too, is that it? Are you going to start saying hurtful things without regard for the consequences? I didn't understand why I was so angry with him that day. Only later, when I'd calmed down, did I realize that my words had been intended to provoke him, to make him confess his feelings. I'd always been so considerate of others, and that's how I'd grown, but how could I have been so carried away with him? Perhaps it was because he'd indulged me too much. The entire night, whenever his face came to mind, tears would uncontrollably stream down my cheeks. I knew I was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to apologize. He'd indulged me for so long, why couldn't he just this once? I'd never been so unreasonable, yet I desperately wanted to be his exception, his special case. For the first time, I stayed awake until dawn. My phone remained silent. I was starting to lose it. I wanted to call him. I repeatedly unlocked my phone, but I couldn't muster the courage to press the dial button. Just after 10, my WeChat chimed. Seeing his name flash on the notification screen, my breath practically stopped. He said, I dropped my phone at the restaurant yesterday. When I went back, it was already closed. I just got it back. I'd braced myself for a storm, but this message threw my logic into disarray. I wanted to force him to say more, so I replied with a single word, The typing indicator appeared again, and a flicker of panic arose within me. He said, what happened yesterday upset you? I apologize. The exception, the special treatment I craved, he ultimately gave it to me. My mood lightened considerably. I confessed, sometimes girls don't necessarily want to win, they just want a certain attitude. He looked at me steadily and said, my apology is genuine because I care. Mo, I'm not arguing with you. It's just that, being with you, I often feel insecure. Can you understand that? With that one sentence, all my obsessions dissolved. In the dozen or so hours since our argument, I hadn't once considered his perspective. The reason he was so angry and particular was because, at his age, his sincerity and his value were what he most wanted me to acknowledge. He was long past the age of worrying about whether he was academically excellent, handsome, intelligent, enthusiastic, or ambitious. I'd used tactics meant for boys my own age to try to provoke a confession. But from his perspective, he could only interpret it as, am I really that bad in your eyes? I had essentially trampled on all his pride. Once I untangled this logic, I finally understood how profoundly wrong I had been. I sent him a sincere message, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I coveted your maturity yet deliberately ignored your age. My approach to you was wrong from the start. His call came in the instant I sent the message. As I watched him meticulously roll a Peking duck pancake for me, a sudden realization struck me. Hey, have I been played by you again? He looked at me innocently. Irritated, I said, you basically used this whole situation to teach me the correct way to interact with you, didn't you? He still pretended not to understand, handing me the pancake. Seeing his expression, I was absolutely certain this was a calculated maneuver. I huffed, you knew all along that I'd use the typical student dating approach and mindset on you. So you used this argument to show me that those tactics wouldn't work, because you're much Older, you're a man of the world, and any future attempts by me to be willful, spoiled, or throw tantrums would be seen as immature. I have to grow up quickly to be compatible with you, right? He let me hurl accusations at him, still smiling faintly as he wiped my hands and mouth, replacing the dirty plate with a fresh one and placing it before me. How could I possibly stay angry? He said, "You're overthinking. Just be yourself. Be willful, spoiled, throw tantrums, it's all fine. It's just that everyone has their boundaries. Rather than spending a lifetime arguing because of repeatedly crossing those lines, it's much less troublesome to be clear about them from the beginning." He continued, "I know your boundary, and I won't cross it." I asked, "And what is my boundary?" He replied, "To be given an explanation. Whatever I'm thinking, whatever decision I make, I'll give you an explanation and you'll feel better." One sentence rendered me speechless. Before meeting him, I hadn't even known what my life's boundaries were. I used to think it was respect. I wanted my parents to respect my life decisions. But then I realized they couldn't even respect each other, so how could they respect me? But it wasn't until he said those words that I understood. Yes, it was explanation. From my parents, keep me or abandon me. Just give me an explanation. From him, stay or leave. Just give me an explanation. Don't make me guess. Don't make me wait. Don't leave me in a state of anxious uncertainty. And so, we continued our relationship from spring to autumn. His shop was busy, and he had many social engagements, but he always made time to see me on weekends. Sometimes we'd stroll late into the night, the streets so deserted that not a single taxi could be found. He'd carry me home on his back. He'd tell me ghost stories along the way. I'd playfully hit him, "You're so childish. Scaring a girl so she'll cling to you is such an outdated tactic." He'd walk to the railing by the river, set me down on it, and then turn around, pretending to throw me into the river. I'd scream in terror. He'd seize the moment of my panic and kiss me. After the kiss, he'd nuzzle my nose with his chin, chuckling softly, "Outdated, is it?" My face flushed, I glared at him. In October, a friend of his sent him an invitation to a celebration for his child's 12th birthday. I was shocked. So, it was possible to have a 12-year-old child at that age. He said, "Sometimes, when I think about it, it scares me too." I immediately asked, "Can I come with you?" I told him that many of my classmates had held 12th birthday celebrations when I was younger. I had longed for the ceremony, the beautiful princess dress, the many gifts. Unfortunately, it never happened. He listened and said, "If you didn't have one at 12, I can help you have one at 24. I sent a dizzy with laughter emoji, saying, "If I'm the main character, then who will you stand with?" He replied, Can't we both be the main characters?" My heartbeat seemed to stop for a moment. I said, "Ha ha ha, don't scare me. I'm still a third-year university baby." I intended this as a subtle way of conveying that marriage was still a distant prospect for me. He replied, "You'll be ready one day, won't you?" He understood that I wasn't rejecting him, I was rejecting the institution of marriage itself. But I realized I was a little afraid. I could dodge it this time, but I couldn't avoid it forever. At the birthday party, the table where we sat was filled with his closest friends, all decked out in designer brands, clearly people of considerable wealth. The women were busy tending to their children, chatting about new properties they'd bought, new businesses they'd invested in, how their mothers-in-law were, how their sisters-in-law were. The men, meanwhile, were feigning poverty while simultaneously boasting about the connections they'd recently made and how they were expanding their business ventures. At first, I listened with interest, thinking these were all new and exciting worlds. But after a while, it struck me as being identical to my father's annual New Year's Eve dinner boasting to my grandfather about how successful he was. Aurelian occasionally chatted with those present. Although the conversations were similar with everyone, I somehow felt he was different from them all. The same age, but a different sincerity, a different refinement. He was always concerned that I might be bored, so he'd quietly introduce each friend, explaining what they did, how they'd met. After introducing most of the group, he was called away to another table to offer toasts. I was left to smile politely and listen to the ongoing gossip. The women took their children outside to play, and it was then that the men's conversation took a turn. Upon learning that a friend at the next table had divorced and found a beautiful university student, all the men at the table expressed keen interest, exchanging knowing glances and discussing it. These remarks felt like a personal insult. It seemed no one cared about the emotional journey the divorced man and the student had taken. The men's understanding of the situation was remarkably consistent. The fact that he'd found a young, beautiful student meant he was incredibly impressive. Without a word, I turned and walked out. Aurelian saw me from the next table, put down his glass, and followed. At the door, he grabbed my arm. I turned and snapped, "Are these your good friends? Are you one of them? Is that why you chose me?" He seemed to understand the issue immediately. "I thought you might not like them, but I never imagined it would be because of something so vulgar." He said, "I hesitated about bringing you here, but what ultimately decided me was that I wanted you to understand my real environment. These friends, like me, grew up poor and worked hard to make their way. They may seem no different from most people in society, but compared to those of you who have gone to university, they're certainly cruder. I knew you might wonder if I was also like that, just better at hiding it." I hadn't thought about it before, but at that moment, a seed of doubt was planted in my mind. I didn't spend every day with him. I had no way of knowing whether the real him in his daily life was elegant or crude. But if he had friends like these, could he truly be that different? In that instant, I felt that perhaps we really weren't on the same path. I walked out of the restaurant. He followed, saying, "I won't argue with you. I can even remain silent. I'll take you back." I was resolute. "No need." He approached me. "I brought you here, and I'll take you back." I turned to him, my eyes filled with fury, but the first thing I saw in his gaze was a plea. He said, "You can be angry for as long as you need. But please, don't think the worst of me." I understood clearly that I developed a mental block about him. Even if it wasn't directed at him personally, it was certainly towards his circle of friends. It was like being trapped in a dead end. I was stubbornly stuck, unable to turn around. Later, I confided in a senior from my university club, and her simple words pulled me back. She said, "Are you dating him or his ragtag bunch of friends? People say birds of a feather flock together, but can a 30-something-year-old man really be influenced for the worse? And are all businessmen supposed to be surrounded by a mix of all sorts of people? Are crude-talking people not good people? Are men who think about finding young girls as wives to be condemned? Do you think he's been comfortably nurtured in school like you? To earn money, to make a living, does he have the luxury of choosing his friends?" Right. I was being narrow-minded again. So I decided to take the initiative and seek him out on the weekend to mend his wounded little heart. The car arrived. I habitually climbed into the passenger seat, only to see two elderly people sitting in the back. He introduced them. "My mother is here for a minor thyroid surgery. They just landed, so we're having dinner together." I'd never been afraid of meeting strangers, but that day in the car, I was a nervous wreck, my palms sweating profusely. The dinner was surprisingly warm. The elderly couple clearly came from humble beginnings. They remarked on how much more expensive the dishes were here compared to their hometown, while simultaneously insisting on ordering more food to nourish me. Their tone, their mannerisms, the way the elderly woman held my hand, it all reminded me so much of my grandmother. One hand holding mine, the other gently stroking the back of my hand, her eyes constantly moist with warmth. Midway through the meal, I excused myself to use the restroom. I secretly went out and paid the bill. As I turned around after swiping my phone, I was startled to see him standing behind me. He enveloped me in a hug, his chin resting on the top of my head. "Suddenly meeting my parents, were you frightened?" I shook my head. "It was fine. Your aunt and uncle are so kind." He said, "Since we parted last week, I've been feeling incredibly anxious, unsure of what else I could do to prove my loyalty. My parents happened to be coming, so I thought I'd bring them to meet you." He continued, "I have no ulterior motives, and you shouldn't overthink it. I'm serious about our relationship. Because I'm so serious, I want to show you all the facets of who I truly am. If you don't think I'm good enough, I'll accept it." My heart was a jumble of emotions. I felt that the future with him was undeniably, tangibly closer. Perhaps marriage wasn't as distant and terrifying as I'd imagined. Before the winter holidays, the elderly couple said they were returning to their hometown. Aurelian and I went to the airport to see them off. On the way back, he handed me a bag, saying it contained a sweater his mother had knitted for me. The elderly lady had noticed that the sweaters I wore were rather loose, and with the winter winds often penetrating the holes, she'd knitted me a tightly woven one. I tried it on in the car. The shoulders and back fit perfectly. I asked him in amazement, "How did your aunt know my size? She didn't even measure me." He said, "My mother measured you with her hands, span by span, while you were asleep." My eyes welled up for no apparent reason. At that time, I feared marriage, not just because of him, but also because of the apprehension of entering his family. But now, all my worries about everything related to him had vanished. As for the obstacles on my side, even if the sky fell, I would fight to the end. During the winter holidays, I brought him to my grandparents' house. The first words out of my mouth were introducing his name and that he was my boyfriend. The second was that he was 13 years older than me. My grandparents seemed to hesitate for only a few seconds before warmly welcoming him into the house. While my grandparents busied themselves with pouring water and fetching snacks, he meticulously recounted his work, income, marital status, and family details. Before evening, my younger brother had relayed this information to my parents. So, I took him directly to my parents' house. My mother, enraged, slammed the door and stormed out, saying, "It's either him or me. You decide." My father, unusually, remained silent, chain-smoking. Aurelian recounted to my father everything that had happened between us, from how we first met to how our relationship developed, to everything that had transpired to date. Finally, my father looked up, his eyes slightly red. He tilted his head back, rubbed his eyes vigorously, and said to me, "Your father has never given you care or love." I'm sorry. I hadn't cried in front of my father for over a decade. I'd resolved that day not to give in, no matter what. But those tears, upon hearing those words, flowed uncontrollably. My father said, "You two go out for dinner. Don't linger here and stop crying. I'll handle your mother." Ultimately, my father and mother reached an agreement. My father added 2 properties to my mother's name, and my mother conceded. Furious, I slammed the door and left. Later, I went to a hotel and complained to Aurelian. My mother is obsessed with money. Her entire marriage has been held together by money, and even my marriage has to be bought by my father. He said, "She's almost 50. What does she need money for? Think carefully, who is it really for?" I said, "You don't understand my mother. The thing she loves most in this world is money." He shook his head and smiled. You silly girl, you're always so clever, except when you shouldn't be. All mother love her children in this world." I scoffed. My relationship with my mother remained strained after that. On New Year's Eve, at my grandmother's house, we made dumplings together. One rolled the dough, the other filled them. We worked together all evening, yet neither of us said a word to the other. It wasn't until midnight, when my grandparents gave me my New Year's money, that my mother threw several property deeds at me. My mother said, "What do I need these houses for? That deadbeat father of yours spends his money on women. If I don't brazenly demand them for you, how much will he leave you?" My mother's face was pale with anger. "You're marrying a man much older than you. He'll surely die before you. When he's gone, you'll have all these properties. You can sell a few and hire 3 or 5 caretakers to look after you until you're 100. By then, we'll all be long dead. Who will be able to control you? You chose this life. Live it well. Don't mistreat yourself, do you hear me?" Hearing my mother's words, tears streamed down my face. He'd been right all along. What mother in the world doesn't love her child? On my 24th birthday, I finally married him, as I had wished.